We're going to do it a little bit different this webinar. Do more of a conversation between Gerald and I as we have talked about the different CPT components of what is CPT, how do you get involved in CPT, what are the parts of the CPT cone. So we thought we would go at it a little bit different. Some people are wondering, how can I actually now what I know, if I want to get into CPT, how can I get into it? So how to transition into CPT. So we've learned a little bit about CPT, the cones, but now we want to show you, a lot of people get a little nervous on how do we get into CPT? Do I have to buy this big cone truck? How much is it going to cost us? Well, Eijkelkamp has joined up and came out with a new product called the Drill'n CPT. Gives you the ability to use what you already have. And then you're able to add some of the CPT components, the drill string, the rods, the CPT, the laptop and that, to be able to read the CPT data to give that to you. A lot of people are using this already. We've got people in the United States, we've got people in Canada that are already using this product. So we don't want you to be afraid of it. Use what you have, get started into it. So the Drill'n CPT, what is a Drill'n CPT? A Drill'n CPT is actually a 20-ton pusher that has the ability to go into your current drill rig. It goes into the clamps, which allows you to take what you already have, that drill rig that you already have with the clamps, put our CPT apparatus in there, clamp it in, plug in your hydraulics, your electric, and you've got an actual 20-ton pusher. What is a Drill'n CPT? It can deliver a continuous CT profiler or data in between sampling, just like a regular CPT truck, but there's a lot of versatility because it is in your drill rig. You can be doing drilling, you add this apparatus, and then you can do exactly what a CPT truck would do. It allows you to advance through refusal layers and apply CPT testing to greater depths by adding this combination to your rigs. All right, so Gerald is going to talk a little bit. So adding it to your drill rig, what does that look like? What do you need from your drill rig to make this apparatus start working? Gerald, you got it?
Yeah, Troy, thanks. And welcome, everybody. As Troy said, basically what you get is a 20-ton pusher that you see here on the right-hand side. And you obviously need to connect it to the hydraulic system. And what we show in here is in both SI units as well as in inch-pound units, what kind of oil pressure and oil flow you need. And 2,000 or 2175 psi in maximum pressure and a required oil flow of about 4.5 gallons per minute is nothing special for a drill rig. And that means that your hydraulic system that you have on your drill rig can easily operate this Drill'n CPT. But there are a couple other things that I want to highlight, and that's why I put this slide in here. You see that the CPT force is the 20-ton or 200 kilonewton or 55,000 pounds. You see the speed that we can go between 0.8 and 1 inch per second. I told you in the past that the 0.8 inch per second is what the code prescribes, but you can go a little bit faster, so you can do that. So you have basically a tool that can do all the CPT. However, and that's something that no system is perfect, what I also want to highlight is that the CPT stroke is only about 32 inches. Normally, when you have a full-fledged CPT truck, it has a stroke of a little over a meter, a little over 40 inches, because the CPT rod is traditionally 1 meter long. This one has a little bit smaller stroke, so that means that you have to move the clamp up and down a little bit more frequently. But other than that, you have a perfectly suitable CPT unit, and you see there the dimensions as well. It's about 70 inches tall, 28 inches wide, so it should fit most CPT units. So Troy, that's what it is.
It sounds, so just because it has a smaller stroke doesn't change your data or anything. It just means you have to go, what does that exactly mean for us?
What it means, Troy, is that normally when you put a new rod in there, and we'll see a picture a little bit later, you can go in one go, push that rod all the way down. And now it means that you have to move the clamp that you see here on the right hand side on the top of the whole thing. You have to right there. You have to move that up and down a little bit more frequently. It doesn't affect your CPT data. It just means that you have a little bit more interruptions. And normally when you go this whole thing, say that you go down 60 feet or so, then normally you have 20 interruptions where you have to move the clamp up and down. And now you'll have about 24, 25 interruptions. So it will take you slightly longer, but nothing is really affecting your CPT data.
Okay. Well, so this CPT system that we see right now on the screen is actually a 20-ton push. How do you actually get that into your drill rig and make it work?
Okay. What we have done is gotten some video. If I get this to work, yep, there we go. Let me just play this video. What you see here is the unit is sitting on a little crawler that you roll up to your CPT, to your drill rig. It is mounted on the front of the crawler. We also have a skid-mounted version where you don't have a crawler. You have to then move it with other equipment, but you can get it with a dedicated little crawler. You move it in front of the drill rig, and then with the winch, you lift it up slightly from the crawler. You see now the person is getting on there, connects the winch to the top of the Drill'n CPT to lift it up slightly, so that it is then hanging in the winch. And once it's loose from the unit, the video will continue. Once it's loose from the Drill'n CPT, you can move the crawler out of the way. We'll just wait for it to happen. And the reason why I showed you this in real time is that you can see actually how long it takes to drive it on there, to put it in position, so that we don't just show you only pictures and you're wondering how long actually everything is going to take. So this is in real time, real speed. So now you see that the Drill'n CPT is hanging in the rig, and you can move this crawler out of the way. Then the next part, oh, this is going. Let me move to the next slide. Here you see it hanging. And now, of course, we need to connect it to the unit. And the connection, what we're first going to show you are the mechanical connections. By lowering the platform, you have a way to move the bottom of the CPT, Drill'n CPT unit, so that you can align it properly and that you can clamp it with the clamps, the bottom of the rig. You can see happening there, and once it's clamped in, and I'll show you a better shot a little bit later, you move the winch to a different position in the back, and you lift it so that you hang it in the winch as well. That way, if something goes wrong, this unit can really not tip back at all, because the operator during CPT will be standing on that platform, and the last thing that you want is that the whole thing comes loose for whatever reason. I told you earlier, and we're going to clamp it in the bottom. We have a close-up shot here, and you see the clamp just attaches it firmly to the drill rig. You see the bayonet connection at the bottom. We'll come to that later when you have some additional anchoring. But normally, when you just use it from the drill rig, this is how you clamp it to the system. So now it's mechanically held in place. And the only other thing that we now need to do is we need to connect it hydraulically and electrically. We have two hoses with quick couplings. We connect it to the hydraulic system of the drill rig, And then finally, you have to have the electronic connection, and just connect the cable. And now it has the power and the hydraulics, so that it can actually operate the system. And with that, you are ready to start doing your CPT. And just to give you a first impression of that, and we don't show the whole CPT push, but here the person is now putting the cone with the first tube in the unit, lower it down, so to have at least the starting point. And then obviously he's going to continue with additional tubes, and maybe at some point in the future we'll show you the whole thing, but right now it's more important to show you just how it works and how we connect the unit with the Drill'n CPT. So this is where we ended the recording. But you can see it's very straightforward to connect it to a drill rig. It's simple to connect. It is safe. We have safeguards in place that the unit cannot move away. The connections are very simple, be it with the clamp or with quick connectors. So it's all relatively simple and fast to convert your drill rig to a CPT unit.
And Gerald, that carrier right there, that's actually holding the CPT rods, that actually is not just a carrier for the Drill'n CPT. That actually has all your rods and everything that you can use right there and lift it up to working height. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it has everything there. You can also store additional cones on there. So that's normally you have, of course, in a drill or in a CPT truck, you have a pipe rack. In this case, or tube rack. In this case, you don't have that, but this unit can move around and hold everything that you potentially need to perform your CPT. And you also see it already. The rods, at least some of the rods, are pre-strung, and normally you would pre-string every single rod, but in this case, they only put, I think, 4 or 5 rods on the tube rack.
Okay. And then I saw the white foot pedal on the platform. Is that what is that for?
What is that platform? Let me go back to show that. You see it over here as well. Basically, what happens is the CPT procedure has certain steps. You first need to push the rods down. Then the next step is that you hold the rods in place. You loosen the clamp at the top to move the clamp upwards and put a new rod in place, and then the whole procedure starts again. And in order to avoid it, you have to do all kinds of manual handling with the control panel. What you can do is just hit that foot pedal, and it will then automatically go to the next step, so that you set your settings, you enter your settings initially, and after that, with the foot pedal, it just goes to the various steps. Very easy to perform the actual CPT.
Wow. Okay. That sounds simple enough to perform a CPT, giving anybody the ability that has a drill rig with clamps that can plug it into auxiliary hydraulics. Are there many limitations for a system like this? Because it seems pretty nice.
Well, obviously, when it comes to purely the CPT part, whether you push the cones with a cone truck or push the cones with the Drill'n CPT, it's exactly the same. You have, most cone trucks have a 20-ton capacity. This pusher has a 20-ton capacity. So you can push the same cones to the same depth. You can do the same dissipation tests we talked about in one of the previous webinars. You can put the same modules that you would normally have in a cone truck on there. So from a CPT point of view, performing the CPT is exactly the same thing. But there is a slight difference, and that is when you see a cone truck, most of the time, and that's why I'm showing this picture, and it's hopefully you get now very familiar with once you have seen some of these webinars. But you see that the cone truck generally pushes the cone near the center of gravity. And why it's important is that you now can use the full weight of the cone truck, most of the time about 10% or 15% more than the maximum pushing force, but you can use the full weight of the cone truck to provide the reaction force to make sure that you can push the cone into the ground. Well, when we are talking about a CPT or a drill rig, it's slightly different. Obviously, the rig still has and can have a decent weight, maybe not 20 tons, but it can have it can be fairly heavy depending on what size rig you have. But you are no longer pushing the cones near the center of gravity of the rig. You're pushing the cones towards the one end of the rig, and that means that generally speaking, only about half of that rig weight will be available as reaction force. And that generally means that you will not have automatically on site a 20-ton pushing capability. You need to create some kind of reaction force because the dead weight of the rig is not sufficient. Well, in and of itself, that's not that hard. What we're showing here is just a piece of drill pipe with a single auger that you then can connect to your drill rig as you lower this connecting piece in place. And what you then can do after that, if I go to the next video, is just start to rotate this auger into the ground, so that you basically, and I won't show you getting this whole thing in the ground all the way, but you can go to whatever depth is required to provide the additional reaction force that you can then use together with the weight of the drill rig, so that you have the 20-ton capacity available. And what I already showed you earlier, on the bottom of the Drill'n CPT, you have this bayonet coupling that you can then use to very easily connect the unit, the Drill'n CPT, to the anchor that is in place. And now you see that the ground anchor is held in place with the bottom clamp, and then you use clamp one level higher to hold the Drill'n CPT in place, so that everything is again safely connected and safely anchored and firmly held in place. And now what you have is part of the reaction force comes from the dead weight of the rig. Part of the reaction force comes from this ground anchor, so that together you have the excess of the 20-ton or the 45,000 pounds that you need, so that you can do your CPT and make full use of the pushing capability of the Drill'n CPT. And that's really the major limitation, that you only have, without a ground anchor, roughly half of the drill rig's dead weight available as reaction force. And if you need more of that reaction force, then you need to put in a ground anchor. So that's kind of the only limitation I can think of, Troy. And what you see here are different types of ground anchors. You see the single piece pipe with the helix, whether it's a smaller or larger diameter, we can provide in different diameters. You can put the extension piece in there to put the thing deeper. You can also put pipes in there with a continuous flight. And then finally, you can also put a balance beam in there, where you now suddenly have this thing sitting to the side of where you do your CPT. Because here, of course, you will push your CPT cone through the pipe, which means that you will not necessarily get accurate CPT data as long as you're inside this piece of pipe. Whereas in this one, you are still seeing the soil, though it may have been somewhat affected by this helix. So those are the various types of ground anchors that are available to provide this additional reaction force.
All right, thanks, Gerald. It looks like a pretty good system where you can add those ground anchors to it to make it a real 20-ton push. there was one question, I believe it just got answered. Joseph, you asked it about, for reaction force. I hope that answers your questions. If anybody has any other questions, we've got a few minutes. Please let us know, ask them right there, and we'll get to it. As Rob had mentioned right after Joseph asked that question, they're using it up in Canada, and what they've done is just taken some hollow stem augers like this, created their to anchor it to the earth to give them that reaction force that they need, and they're having tremendous business with it right now. So the Drill'n CPT really does take what you have and creates your ability to get into the CPT market. And with Eijkelkamp, we have our own pushers, as you just saw the Drill'n CPT. We have our own CPT equipment as far as the cones we have sonic cones. We're coming up new cones. We have video cones. Gerald, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
Yeah, the only thing that I would like to add is that I think what is important for people to understand is that this unit is really meant to simplify your transition to CPT. I've mentioned it several times in the past. I'm a conehead. I believe that CPT is a much better soil investigation method than SPT. But I'm also a realist, and that means that a lot of people here in North America are somewhat reluctant to start applying CPT, and therefore initially you may not necessarily have a great demand for CPT. What this system allows you to do is to use the drill rig that you have, maybe with some slight modifications, because you may not have already an easy tapping point to hook this unit up to your hydraulic system, but those are just small modifications that can easily be made. But it allows you to use what you have, make a relatively small investment, and then allows you to start performing CPT and offering CPT to your clients. And then only if you feel later on it's worthwhile to go to a fully dedicated CPT truck, you can then upgrade to that. But this is just a nice and easy way to get you involved with CPT, to offer CPT to your clients without having to spend really a fortune to come up with a dedicated CPT truck. And I think that's an important thing. Why we were saying in the first webinar, and again this time, that we say, how can you transition into CPT? And this is an easy way of doing that. So that's why I think this is a message that really needs to be emphasized, because quite often the people that are watching this have a drill rig, but not necessarily a CPT rig, and this gives them an opportunity to get involved with the CPT unit.
Excellent. Gerald, I've got a couple questions for you that just came in. One is, what about inclination adjustment? Do you just use the drill rig itself, or how does that happen?
Yeah, basically what will happen is you level your drill rig, and once that is leveled, then you make sure that the unit, since the Drill'n CPT is firmly attached through the clamps with your drill rig, then the Drill'n CPT is sitting vertically, and there's a check in there that it is indeed vertically. And the other thing, of course, is that once you put your ground anchor in place, that is probably the most critical. But again, by putting putting it in place with your drill rig, as long as your drill rig is level when you put it in, you should be able to get your ground anchors in place vertically as well. But there's always a check before you start doing your CPT. The system will automatically check that your cone is going vertically down. And if an adjustment needs to be made, then you can still do it. Having said all that, you cannot expect that the cone will continue to go vertically down. It is very common that it will deviate as you get to greater depth. The ASTM standard allows that. The ISO code allows that. And then you can, since the inclination is being recorded, you can always make adjustments to come up with the actual depth where you are. But basically, by leveling your truck, you have a good starting point.
Excellent. What about, is it important? One question is do you have to have 3 clamp system to use the CPT unit?
No, you don't. as I showed you before, one clamp is really essential, obviously, because you want to make sure that you can clamp your Drill'n CPT unit in place. Once you put a ground anchor in place, it would be nice if you can have two clamps, one to clamp it to the ground anchor, and the other one to the bottom of the Drill'n CPT. Is it 100% essential? No, probably not. But it would be nice to have that option, that at least you have two clamps there, but you must have one.
Okay. Excellent. What about, can the unit handle 55 millimeter guide casing?
Unfortunately, right now, the answer is no. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem. Let me explain it to you as I'm scrolling back to the very beginning where I showed you the table of what this unit can handle. When you go to, here we are. You can see in here that we have the rod sizes that it can handle is between 36 and 44 millimeters. That is what the clamp is used for. So from that point of view, it cannot put in 55 millimeter casing, but you could put in that casing with your drill rig. We have a client in Canada that is actually never putting the casing in with the pusher. They put the casing in with the drill rig and then start pushing the cone through the casing. So the answer is, as so often, yes and no. Not necessarily, the casing cannot be handled by the Drill'n CPT unit, but it does not mean that you cannot place casing.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Gerald. Great information. Love the concept of the Drill'n CPT. Hopefully that helps a lot of people understand what is possible. We have people doing it. If you want any testimonies, please let us know.